Hi folks, welcome to my Bit Retro Journal. I'm playing Battleship on my ZX Simulator, which is a ROM emulator of the ZX81 that I wrote for the QL. And Battleship is a game I wrote in the 80s as a kid. What today's video is about is actually emulators. This is another installment in my QL User's Guide for new users. And I did one where I kind of talked about what hardware you need for the QL to get started and showed a little bit about how the operating system works. And I highly recommend actually, eventually if you get an opportunity to collect hardware, it's actually really fun. And primarily because this old hardware has its own sort of unique things that we don't really see nowadays. Yes, it's slow and it has archaic media like these microdrives, which I really like about the QL, especially now in the modern times, because these are like miniature tape drives. And I think we as humans love miniaturization of things because it adds complexity. But it's also kind of cool to be reading and writing on magnetic media, I think. I realized this recently as I was getting my Amiga 600 put together and running. I kind of enjoyed putting 3.5-inch floppies into the disk and getting it booted into Workbench. And similarly, running a QL using the original microdrives is kind of fun. Now, back in the 80s when that's all you had and they perhaps could be faulty, that was very frustrating and perhaps caused part of the failure of the QL. They only put a 3.5-inch disc in. But now in the the retro genre, it's actually kind of I think it makes it special. And again, for my Amiga 600, I love the fact that it has a 3.5-inch floppy drive that I can put floppies in. Although I'll also put an SD card reader in there as well. And it seems odd, but that's what retro computing, the hobby, is all about. And now some people will want to try to turn these machines into modern machines, and I'm for that as well. Like you can put accelerator boards in there. I think gold card or super gold card, which will run 4 to 8 times faster. Lots of memory. You can even have FPGA hardware boards that run, the Q68, which I've shown on my channel, runs about 23 times faster. And the Amiga is no different. You can put auxiliary boards in that and try to, max out the memory. You can put the PyStorm in the Amiga and have 128 megabytes of memory and do all sorts of cool things. And I'm really happy that's happening as well. But there's also a part of me that likes the old stuff. But if you don't know a particular platform and you don't feel comfortable getting right into it and spending money, I think emulators is a great way to get started. And so today I wanted to sort of get you an idea of what emulators are out there for the QL and show you some of my favorite ones, or the ones that I use. There are a lot of emulators for the QL. There's I think a dozen. So that it's not just one or two. So that's what I want to show you today for the if you're a new user and you want to get started on that. So let's do that. We're going to go into my desktop machine. I'm at Dylan Jones's Sinclair website, which is a great resource for the QL. And the software downloads page basically is just a list of free software that's categorized by these subcategories. And we're going to look at emulators today. Before I go to emulators, which are Sinclair QL emulators for various platforms, there's also emulators for the QL. So you have Spectrum emulator, and you have the ZM series of emulators, and the Spectator. Now they do require extra memory, and some require hardware accelerations. Well, they all require hardware accelerations because it'll run too slow otherwise. And then for ZX81, you have the Extricator, which again requires extra memory and hardware acceleration. Then, of course, you have my ZX Simulator, which is a ROM emulator, and I have a demo for this running on DOSBox. I haven't. I should get Dylan my actual zip of my downloadable so that folks could grab it from here. Right now, it just resides on the QL forum. But what I wanted to talk about today is emulators for the QL emulators for other platforms. So the first set here, QLA. So this is just a utility. So QLA, the original one, runs MS-DOS and also for Windows 95, 98, and Linux boxes. And then there was an upgrade for QLA2, which would run Windows 2000 and XP systems. And this is actually the one that I use the most. Don't know why. And then QL2K is an update of that will also add sound, which this one didn't have, and fixes some issues. But for whatever reason, I tend to use QLA2 a lot. So I will demo that for you guys today. There's also QPC 1 and 2. This is the latest one. This is actually one of the more favorite, popular ones, favored by the QL community. And I haven't used it much. And again, it runs SMSQ versus running QDOS, the original DOS. And then Emulator you have for various platforms. You have it for the Apple Macintosh, for Windows. It's not free, it's shareware, so you do have to give it a little bit of money to get the full-blown version, but you can get a stripped-down version that just gives you 128K of memory. Now, for other platforms, you have two Amiga emulators, QDOS 4 and QDOS Classic. I think I demonstrated one of these, it might have been QDOS Classic, during the month of May when we celebrated the Amiga through the hashtag Amiga. You also have a QL emulator for the Atari. Don't know much about that, so I'll just not say much about it. And then another one that I'll talk about is the SMSQ Cumulator, which is, again, an emulator based off of SMSQ. The nice thing is it's actually written in Java. So you just make sure you have Java installed and it'll run. Then you also have this, a QL, I guess you could call it a QL core for the MES multi-emulator super system, similar to what MAME is for arcade games. Haven't really used much of it. There's also core for the MiSTer. And again, haven't done much with that. And then there's also UQLX, and there's various kinds. There's one for Linux, for Mac, for Windows, and then there's SQL, which is a derivative of Windows that I've used that runs right out of the box. So, and then finally, there's Zarux, which is a multi-platform Sinclair emulator. So it emulates the ZX81 and Spectrum machines, as well as Z88, but it also does the QL. So the ones I'm going to show you today are the SMSQ emulator, the Q emulator, and then I think I'll focus on QLA2 since QL2. I might show you this briefly, but they're very similar. All right, so let's go to do that. So we have Q emulator. We have the three QLAs, QLA1, which is labeled QLA W090, QLA2. I put the pluses there because that's usually the one that I go to so I can see quicker, and QL2K, which is really QLA3. And then we have SMSQ emulator. So I'll do all three of them. Let me do this one first. So QLA generally comes in this sort of format. You have a ROM directory where you have all the ROMs. JS is the last QDOS English ROM, and JSU is the American version of that. Idosoft is my ICE ROM. Minerva is a really good replacement ROM. You have Toolkit 2, and then NFA is a disk interface that allows you to see Windows directories. In the directory, you have basically two types of files. You've got regular directories, which are these, and then you also have, they just have files in it, and then you also have a directory of images, microdrive images. And these I use to communicate with my QL via the SD card interface, which is vDrive that I use. So I find this very useful. The peculiarity about these directories is that all the files that you can then see on the QL emulator, except they need to be entered into a sort of an index database called. There's a file, a special file here called QLadir. It's under Q right here, and you have to add all the files. And now, if you're adding them from within the emulator, it'll automatically update that database. If you're doing it from outside the emulator, there's actually a program that comes with QLA that'll update it for you. One caveat is that this file also contains what's called the data space, the amount of memory in the heap that an executable program needs. And that information on the QL is not stored with the program, it's actually stored on the header sector of the media for that particular file. And so that is stored in the QA directory as well. I'll show you what I mean. So I have a command shell open already. And if I go into sub8, that was the directory. And I'll do, so if I do a directory, that's all we get. But if I use the QL tools command, and it's C program files, Sinclair utilities, QLAT, QLA tool, and I do a -L, that's going to list all the files that are in this QLA dir directory. And you can see CL, CX, ZX Smash. These are all executables, and there were other ones too. Test 4, test 3, test 2. These are all executables. These are the C compiler. That have a data space, and it's 8,000 for the ZX, which is usually default. That again, I compile that with Digital C Special Edition, and I think it's 8,000 bytes for the data space for default programs, and I don't change it. So if I let me do this to demonstrate this. If I go and create a folder here called test, and then I go and copy ZX. Which is an executable into test, I need to then add it to the, and the way I do that is I'm going to do insert ZX, and that's going to, oh, I'm not in the right directory, test. And then if I do a dir, you'll see the test is in here, and then I have to insert it into, and so it's there. And if I do an L now, you'll see that it's there, but it doesn't have any data space. So I actually have to remove this and then add the data space when I insert it. So it's basically -D 8000 -I ZX, and that will add the data space. And now you can see it has it. If I just type this by itself, you'll see all the commands it comes with. And D data space, use data, data size, use data size when adding file to directory that needs the executable. That's an executable. So that's unique of the QL. Okay, so once I've done that, I can then start my emulator. So I can change this to dir test because that's the directory I've created. I'll leave the rest of these alone. And I can make the screen, I think I want it this way. It doesn't change the resolution of QLs. It's still 512 by 256. It just changes what the screen size is for what I'm watching. So now if I boot this up, let me close this just because it's a little messy. And so now if I hit F2, and as soon as it boots up, dir win1, you can see that ZX is in here. Now, dir win8 is that big directory. And I want to copy just a basic file over. And I want to copy horse.bas. All right, so copy win8 horse bas to win1 horse bas dir win1. Now it has both files. And if I actually go back in here, you'll see that horse bas actually exists. Oh, I think when I used the insert command, it actually created this file accidentally. But in horse bas is in this directory now. And if I open this up and actually do the list command, you'll see I'm in the wrong. All right, so I go back to test. And if I do the list command, you'll see now that horse bas is actually in the QL directory as well. All right, let me clear that out. And so now I can execute win1 ZX, and that's going to execute my program. So again, if I dir win1, it has horse. So if I load win1 horse bas, and it should be pretty fast because it's a pretty small file. If I list it, and now I can run it. And this is the advanced horse magnet simulator. And yeah, there it goes. And I don't even know how to play this game, so I'm just going to stop. Just wanted to show you that. And again, if I actually open this up in test, I can open this up in WordPad, and you'll see that it's just a regular text file. Okay, but the only thing you need is it needs to be part of the QLater index file. So let me quit this. So the other thing I wanted to do is make sure I'm not in the directory. I am CD up. I'm going to show you QL2K, which is again very similar. I'm just going to move this out. Where did I move it to? Oh, it's right here. Okay. Move it out and then move it, go to QL2K, and then just move this right here in the directory. So this, again, is just a derivative of a QLA. It has both a 32-bit and 64-bit version. I'll run the 32-bit version. You can see now it has sound. It is. I'm going to run this at one time, real time. I'm going to change the memory to 128K. The image is going to be that size. I'm going to get rid of these for now. And under here, I'm actually going to move this to, so Spook and Assault are Dave Chaplin games. They're actually a lot of fun. I wanted to show those to you. So let me do that next, and then I'll do the test one at the very end, just to show you that it works. JS-ROM, so if I boot this up, it has sound. Yep, so this should work, and it should boot up pretty quickly. You just kind of heard the sound. So just to show you that indeed, dir MDV1. So if I wanted this automatically loaded, I would just actually name this to boot, and then if this is on Mega Drive 1, it'll automatically load it. In fact, if you ever seen my ZX simulator running on the web page, that's how I automatically run it. So I'm going to lrun MDV1 spook, and just to show you what's going on here, copy MDV1 spook boot 3 to con. Did I type? Yeah. So again, yeah. So it just creates the screen for it, loads some programs into memory, and you can see it has MDV1 hard-coded in here. So if I'll run MDV1 spook boot 3, this is going to run a Pac-Man-like game that David Chaplin wrote. Yeah, and here it is. And so it has audio, and if I hit that, you'll see that it's just a Pac-Man clone. Yeah, and so again, pretty cool game. Let me reset this. The problem actually with resetting is it doesn't shut off the audio. So I'm actually going to have to quit it and start it again. So that, again, it's still a little buggy. So 128K, make this that. I want this one-time, real-time. And again, I'm taking these off because 128K is going to require all of it. So if I boot that up, just to show you Assault, which is another Dave Chaplin game, dir MDV2. lrun MDV2 Assault boot. Here we go. And if you do that, you'll see that at one point you get, yeah, now you have more. So it's kind of a fun game. So anyway, that is, so you can, with audio, although the audio doesn't quite sound the way it does on the QL. So, but let me finally do the thing I wanted to do, which now I can keep the memory what it is. And I'm just going to add dir test. So this is the same test directory I ran on the regular QLA before we move on to the next emulator. Yeah, so it's loading that. So boom, dir win1, exec win1 ZX, load win1 horse pass, should also load, yep, and run. And this is going to run slower than it did on the other emulator. But that's only because I've got it set at 1 times. Yeah, so this is kind of what it would run on the QL using ZX Simulator or on a real ZX81. All right, so I'll leave it at that. Those are the 2 primary emulators that I use, QLA and sometimes QL2K. Let me show you QEmulator. This is a great emulator as well. Again, so you have your ROMs, similar to that. You have your software, which is just directories. So that part's very similar. And if you run it, it's going to give you this limited feature, which is free of charge, or you have to, if you want the full version, you have to pay for it, shareware, or there's a demo version. Let me run the demo version for you first. On the demo version, there we go. And so it also has audio, and the demo version comes with a few examples, and the best one is F3, and that is basically running the famous Amiga ball in front of the famous Amiga. It's a paint program. I forget what it's called. The Golden King Tut, I think. So this is just sort of a play on that by using the Q emulator. So it's pretty good. Let me run it next time in this limited mode. In this limited mode, we can actually assign this to a directory. But you'll notice if I go QL2K directory test, and you'll see that dir mdv1 exec mdv1 zx, and it doesn't understand it. Okay. Now, what you can do is attach you can do QDOS floppy, an MDV image. And here, I mean, QLate images, if I try to do this, it says this is not supported. It requires a registration, so you have to pay a fee. But the one cool thing this can do, even in the free version, I have a QDOS floppy. This is the Hermes, the floppy that came with my Hermes chip, which gives me my key clicks and better serial on the QL. And if I can attach this to an actual floppy directory A, and this will work. So that's the really cool thing about the, yeah, it just has to read the disk. It'll eventually get it. There it is. And now if I go dir mdv2, it's actually reading the floppy disk. And if I go copy mdv2, readme text to con, you'll see that, yeah, it actually reads it from the disk. So that's a really cool feature. And again, if you pay for it and you have a full-fledged version, you're not going to be unhappy with this using this. All right, so the final emulator I wanted to show you is the SMSQ. And this is actually a Java. So you have to a Java file, Java program. You have to have Java installed. And you can look at its documentation to figure out which version you have to have installed. But if I run this, it's going to open up a small window. And it actually, so this is running SMSQ, which is the QDOS derivative. You can actually make this picture slightly bigger. So you can say double window size, and it just does that. So by the way, this is set up to be 500 by 500. 512 by 512. I can set the window screen size to be the normal 512 by 256, which is the default QL screen size. And that's kind of what one expects. But notice that to run QL Joules, you need 512 by 512. So I actually configured this to set screen size to 512 by 512. So you can have bigger screens than the default QL. And so now if I run QL Joules, or QJoules, I should say, and it does have, and so this is using the pointer environment, which is sort of the modern, I mean, ICE, the icon control environment I use on the QL is very old, and it never actually, nothing became of it. Other folks then developed the pointer environment, which is much better. And so this is a game that you can say, oh, this is the one you want to move. Actually, I don't even know how to play this game, but in any case, yes, I want to quit. You also have Minefields, which is a cool little game. And here you can, oops, I just lost. Start. Yeah, so plays the mind game. And I can mark that. And again, this moves it. Now, if I click, it's actually not gone. If I escape, you can see that this is my normal window, and behind here is where, so this is still running. So again, it's a multitasking operating system. And this pointer environment was this cool API library that people could then write these windowing environments where now you don't lose the window like in the standard QDOS interface that where windows overwrite each other. So a cool emulator written in Java, and pretty powerful. The and kind of very portable because it's written in Java. So this is the other one that I've used as well. But again, not the only ones. QPC is besides QEmulator, QPC is the other really popular one, which I don't have on here. And then I did run SQLUX. I don't have it here. I don't know why, but I have run it. And it's actually a pretty good emulator as well. But I'll end here, as this video otherwise is getting too long. I hope that was helpful. I know that I threw a lot at you, and there's a lot of emulators out there for the QL. I tried to show you the ones that I use as opposed to just trying to give you a generic look at all of them. I would say the QEmulator, which I don't use as much, is probably one of the more popular ones. And then QPC is the other one. Those are the two that I see people talking about a lot. The cool thing about the QEmulator is that it actually, with a USB floppy hooked to my Windows machine, it is actually able to read these QDOS floppies that are actually I bought this, but if I formatted a floppy through my Kempson disk interface, I could then read it on my Windows machine, which is pretty cool. And this is, by the way, the floppy for the Hermes chip, which is the coprocessor chip that deals with serial I/O, keyboard, and whatnot. So if you hear the key clicks, that's where that comes from. But I know that emulators is just a start. There's lots of other information that you're going to need before you get going on that. So, but hopefully this will be helpful. And again, if you just want to try something and don't want to put any money down, and don't want to install anything, QLA2 or QL2K are two good ones. If you want to spend a little bit of money, I highly recommend QEmulator. If you don't mind installing stuff on your Windows machine, QPC2 is also supposed to be good, and I unfortunately haven't used it much. But those are the ones I would focus on. But like I said, there's many other ones. Go to Dilwyn's website to sort of discover them all. I'm going to leave you now. I'm playing the rubber match. I've played 4 games, and the QL's won 2, and I've won 2. So my own program, ZX81 program, is beating me. So this is the 5th game, and the winner will decide the champion. But I will end here. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.